Hey gang, Rod at East Coast Lumberjack, and this week we're going to talk about anomalies in wood. We're going to talk about wood properties in general. And I'm going to go over a few projects I have here on the bench. But I want to talk. I've been making some handles. I have an order for the University of Connecticut and Yukon, of course, and we have a province called Yukon in Canada, so not to get confused like I do. When they call and say I'm from Yukon, I'm going, yeah, whereabouts in Yukon? Whitehorse? No, the University of Connecticut. So, as you know, we're getting down. The last stack of hickory handlewood is out there, and I'm getting down through the pile. And there's nothing worse when you grab a nice piece of hickory, like this here, and you start cutting it out. Okay, so if you look at both sides of this, there's nothing at all to show that there's any problem underneath that. And when I took both sides of it off, I ran into that right smack dab in the middle of the handle. So let's take a closer look at that. Okay, so number one, so something's happened. As the tree's growing, something's hit the bark, scuffed the bark, whether it's a bullet, I don't know. What do you do in Connecticut down there? You hunt and you know, people log. Maybe it was on somebody's lawn. I have no idea. But anyways, there's been an anomaly. Something whacked that, and of course it grew around it. This is the other side, and it's right in the middle. It's right in the middle of that handle. So that is not going out as a number one East Coast Lumberjack axe handle. Now, it's a beautiful handle. So I will likely finish it, hang it on the right-hand side of the doorway, and then I'll use that in a split maul or something around here. But that's not it. I grabbed another stick and I cut it out. And once I take the four sides off, so this is a four-sided axe handle, first thing I do is I look down it. Okay, like this. Can you see that? There, you can see it right there. Okay, when I look down it and it looks like a ski, that ain't good. Now, can I straighten it? Yes, I can straighten it, and I'll try here right now. Okay, so we can see the big wow in this. Okay, so there's quite a bit. Now, can I straighten it? Now I say I can. I'll show you what I'm doing here. I'm not sure if I really can or not. So I'll put it underneath the vise right here. I put my body weight on it. I bend it down, and again, hickory can take a lot of weight, a lot of abuse like this. Okay, so it's come a bit. So I'm going to move it in. Now I'm about halfway along it. I'm going to put my body weight on it again, and that's not going to. Okay, it's not going to bend it like I need to. Now it has straightened it a fair bit. Actually, quite a bit. Okay. That's actually looks a whole lot better. Needs a little bit more up here. There we go. You heard that. Okay, it's just right there. It just broke right here at the top. Okay, right there is where it split, and it split that little piece of wood off. So that's still not bad. Oh, there we go. Now, that took a lot of weight. Okay, but there it is. It split right down here. Okay. So, I was really putting the weight right on it. But it's broken. Now, a couple things. Number one, I'm pretty darn impressed at the amount of weight I can put on that. This is pecan hickory, and I always thought pecan hickory is a little bit weaker than the other hickories, but it took quite a bit to break. But number two, usually when I get one bent that bad, I only played around with it because you guys are here watching. Normally what I do is I cut that into 3 pieces and it goes in my burn pile, and it's still going to go in my burn pile. It was relatively straight, but again, usually I don't mess around with that, okay? It's not going out as a #1 East Coast Lumberjack handle. If anything, if I straighten it, I'll hang it on the other side, and of course it'll stay there. So let's actually, and while we're talking about straightening handles, this handle, we've straightened it. It had sweep in it. And I've got it marked right on there, sweep. And it swept, there's the arrows, it swept this way. And if you look down that is still, I straightened that months ago, and it's still just as straight as a die. So this is the evidence that you can straighten a hickory handle and it'll stay that way. So this one here, no, actually this is a, what is that? I think it's a Moore. It is too. It's a vintage Moore, and I can likely sell that because it's, even though it had sweep in it now, I've straightened it. It's been straight for 6 months. Still going strong. So, yes, you can. This one here had so much, like it had a lot of bend in it, and it was right on the outside of the log. There, you can see the bark here in the handle. And it's dry, but for whatever reason, like we had to bend that a long ways. So that one's toast. So that one and that one. Oh yeah, I know what else we were gonna do. Let's go. So the other thing I did is because again we're getting down on hickory wood. So what I have left in my last batch of hickory is right here. Okay. So there's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So there's 23 left. Okay, and when that's gone, we're into this stuff. Okay, now this is a stuff, and I'm not sure. This is stuff I brought in, and I've been running the dehumidifier here. Okay, and right now it says 46% moisture content in the air here. But this stuff's been drying fairly good. Let's take another look at it and see where we're at. Last time we were below 20. So let's see here now. There we go. 11%. 15%. 11%. 9%. 14. So we're between 9 and 14% here. Oh, that one's 18. That's on the bottom. 15, sorry. And that one, 17. So the farther down we get, the more moisture there is. So again, I like working my wood when we're right around 10% or less moisture content. This stuff here is holding its own, even though the dehumidifier is running every day. We're between 8, 9, and 14%. So I took a piece yesterday and I cut it out. Trying to find what it is here. Ash. That's not it. That's not it. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's it right there. Okay. So I know this is it because remember I told you you get these little whiskers when it's not quite dry. You get these little whiskers that come off a hickory. So let's see. So I took this one out right off the top of the pile and I cut it out. So let's see where we're at here. Okay. 16% on the side. 13% there. On this end, 14%. On the butt end, 13%. So again, a little bit higher than I like. And I knew it was because I seen these little whiskers here. You can see there when I'm cutting it on the bandsaw. But not far off, okay, not far off. Now the other thing, I left it yesterday. I didn't put linseed oil on the end, and I was wondering if it would dry enough that would crack, and it hasn't. So that's really good news. And while I'm remembering it, I am going to put a little bit of that linseed oil on the end of it just to save it. There's no need in ruining a beautiful axe handle if you don't have to, so if putting a little bit of linseed oil on it will keep it from splitting, all the better. And that linseed oil just slows down the rate that the moisture is going to come out through the end of that. Because remember, this is a ring porous wood, so those vessels, those little hollow lines, run right down through there, and they're connected. So theoretically, water can come right out through those vessels. So if we put the linseed oil on the end of it like that, what that does is that clogs up all those little vessels. It actually seeps in there a little bit, but it slows down. It won't clog them entirely, of course, because it's an oil, so it'll soak into the wood. And then what happens, of course, is there's a lot that you take your vessel from this big to being a lot smaller with the oil on it, and it's a lot slower. Moisture comes out of it a lot slower. So I've got that done. So that's part of the order for the University of Connecticut, and they have 8 handles that are headed down to the University of Connecticut for when they get started. I need one more to replace this puppy, which was a 29-inch racing axe handle. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, so I need one more. Okay, I just want to finish up on hickory and bashing it. So as we saw in the basement, things can go sideways with just about any kind of wood species. But I've had a fair bit of struggle with hickory. I'm having these anomalies, and sometimes you'll cut them out, and the wood will be bent, like that handle was that I busted. You get those hidden little gems that mess up your handle in the middle of it that you don't see on the outside or the inside. Anyways, hickory, you know, it's a great wood, but it does have its issues. But I've learned to love it, and it's kind of like a love-hate relationship, I'd say. So I was watching another video on YouTube the other day. A guy was talking about run out in handle wood, and how that affects the strength of the handle, and how wood's put together. And man, anyways, I think there's a need. I think the positive way to say this is there's a need for better information on wood, what it is, how it grows, and how us handle guys that use it, how it affects us. So, did a little bit of a deep dive back into my books from forestry school. And it's awesome. Wood is made up of basically three elements: carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. That's what makes up wood. Just those three. It's amazing molecules, and they, of course, combine in different ways, different combinations of that to make up 3 basic compounds, three basic building blocks, and they make up cellulose, hemicellulose, and lignin. Okay, so that's the content of the cells and the cell walls. Okay, that's what builds them. That's what builds our wood. So, and it's interesting because we have all these different tree species and all these different types of wood and hardnesses and softness in wood. It's all made of the same stuff, which is just amazing. It's a miracle, really. And you know, anybody that thinks that evolved, you know, well, good on you. But it takes a heck of a lot of faith to believe in that. There's an architect behind this. Okay, stuff like this doesn't just happen. You just don't throw spaghetti at the wall and it comes out in this great, you know, like there's an architect behind it. And he made it, he created it, and it was pretty amazing stuff. Now the other thing I will say about about this wood. So the way it grows, why wood is really tough if you have a log, okay? And this is the chopping versus splitting, okay? And we talk about this all the time, okay? Buchan's becoming quite a chopper. I hope he shows up at one of the Western Lumberjack shows someday. Actually, Buchan, I'll go with you. Campbell River, Port Alberni, whatever you want. You pick a show, I'll come visit you, and we'll go to a Lumberjack show. Anyways, that's chopping, okay? So chopping wood is you're going across the grain, okay? Across the fibers. And it's tough, okay? If you take an axe and you hit the log this way, it bounces back at you, okay? Because the grains are put together lengthwise in wood, okay? That's how they grow. Okay? So a tree, as we know, there's a bark on the outside, the wood on the inside, and the tree grows this way. Puts bark onto the outside, puts wood onto the inside. So it's building up and down. Okay, so all the cells are put together this way. Okay, so when you try to come across them like this, you got to break them. Okay, that's why chopping wood is tougher than splitting it. Splitting it, you're coming this way. Okay, and that's the way they're held together. And actually, it's the lignin. It's again made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Lignin is the glue that holds it all together. And ring porous woods split fairly easy and straight, because when that wood's put on, as I've said before, the early wood is filled with vessels, okay, hollow vessels, and that's what transports your water and nutrients and stuff up and down in the stem. So and early wood in hardwoods is filled with these vessels, and then of course as you get into later wood, there's less vessels, okay, so it's stronger wood. And when you split along, and that's why when you make a handle, you get that grain run out. That's why it splits along the grain, because you have the most amount of airspace along these hollow vessels where your early wood is in hardwoods. That's why it splits along those easier, and that's why grain orientation matters to us, and we want to put it lengthwise. Now, there is a train of thought out there that says you want to put those, so we always put them lengthwise in our axes. But there's a train of thought that says you should put them the other way, and the reason for that is that's what absorbs shock in your handles. Okay, those hollow vessels absorb that shock. So if you chop this way with your grain this way, the vessels are straight on. Okay, so you actually won't get as much cushion or shock absorption as if you turned it this way, and it's actually compressing the wood this way. So I do get the thought pattern, or the thinking behind turning your grain pattern that way. And on a wood like hickory, which is so tough, you can get away with that. But again, still most of us like the grain this way. And I'm going to do another video on how you hold an axe and how you chop with an axe, because there's a lot of, I've seen some handles breaking here lately on YouTube as well. And I want to explain to you why those handles are breaking. Okay, there's lots of forces that guys are, and I've watched you chop. And again, I mean, I know everybody's just playing around and doing things in their backyard. You know, I don't mean this to be critical, but I do want to help you understand why the handles are breaking, where they're breaking, and why they're breaking, okay? And some of it has to do with how you're holding it, some of it has to do with how you're swinging it, some of it has to do with what you're doing even after the axe hits the wood, okay? So there's lots of things people do that alter that handle and the forces on the handle and the stresses on the handle, which is causing it to break, okay? So I want to go through that a little bit. But for now, I want to finish up on the hickory. So hickory wood is so again, they're all built out of the same compounds, the same structures, the same area. Only hickory woods are denser. So when they're growing their cells, they grow tighter, okay? That they're stronger and they're denser. So the cell walls are thicker, and there's a few less vessels. You know, it's doing something different as it's growing. So just to compare, so that's how it grows. That's the compounds that makes it up. The lignin is what holds it all together. So the guys that are saying, you know, I'm not sure, you know, how wood comes apart, what holds it together. It's this lignin that holds these. That's what binds one cell wall to the next. So you're basically splitting along those fibers, okay? The cells that have grown, the wood cells that have grown this way. So that's why when you hit a wood on the end, it splits so nice.
And if it doesn't, that's because there's the growth in the wood has been different. So there's either a knot in it, or there's a Y in it, or there's something else happening in the wood that the grain's not running straight. So that, because most of our woods, hardwoods and softwoods, split fairly nicely because we're going with the length of the fibers and the where the wood's put on. Okay, so it's growing this way, which is why chopping's a lot tougher. And that's why you also want to, if you go straight in on those fibers, you won't penetrate at all. But if you go in, so what you're going to do, you're going to take a halfway between coming in this way and splitting it. So that's why the 45 is good, because number one, it's you're getting more penetration without splitting it, because the happy balance is, the straighter up you come into the log, the less penetration you have. The farther down you go, the more penetration, and the farther in it'll go. But of course, you're not, even though you're going in farther, lengthwise, depthwise, you're not going as much. So the 45 is really the ideal because of all that geometry in physics. That's 45 degrees is the best way in, which is why we swing at 45 degrees. And some of you guys that are chopping, just think about your angle on the bottom. It ain't 45. It's less than that. And if you're swinging less than 45 degrees, you wonder why your axe bounces out. It's because your angle's not good. But again, that's, I chop. That's what I do. So I'll try to help you with that and bring a little bit more to the table on that. But I just want to go over, so just to compare, because I've talked a bit about the hickory woods, and I talked about pecan a little bit. So I want to, shagbark, pignut, and bitternut, they're what we call true hickories. And then there's the pecan hickories. They're not what we call true hickories. Shellbark's also a true hickory. But pecan is it. And the difference is, I want to talk about the modulus of rupture. So how much pressure, or how much pressure it takes to basically rupture the wood. And in your true hickories, it's right around 140. Okay, bitternut's a little bit lower. Modulus of rupture, and that's about 120. Shellbark's 124. But pecan hickory is below 100, just so you know. Okay, so pecan hickory is about 94. So pecans don't quite have the toughness that the other hickories do because of the way it grows. And how elastic it is. So most of our hickories are right around 12 to 15 gigapascals as far as their modulus of elasticity. But then when you go to pecan, it's actually 11, so it's a little bit below that. Same as crushing strength. Okay, if you're just going to try to crush it in a machine, crushing strength in most of the hickories are above 60. You get to pecan, it's 54. Okay, so pecan is a whisker below the other hickories. But just so you think, I don't want a pecan hickory handle. And maybe you're wondering how white ash compares to that. So white ash, as far as modulus of rupture, remember that was around between 120 and 140 in the hickories. White ash is 103, so it's a little bit lower than that. Okay. But as far as elasticity goes, it's a 12. Okay, so there's lots of flex in white ash, and that's why it's as good as hickory, because, of course, it's right in there with the 11s and 13s of the hickories. And the crushing strength, again, in the hickories, they're usually around 60. We know that pecan hickory is 54, white ash is 51, so it's right there. Okay, so it's right there with it. So white ash is a pretty impressive wood. And you're saying, well, gee, it doesn't sound good, it's low. Okay, well, let's just look at birch. Okay, white birch, modulus of ruptures, 84. Okay, and its crushing strength is 39, and elasticity is 10. Okay, actually it's almost 11, but so it's a little bit elastic, but the other two categories, it's low. Okay, but it ain't the lowest. Let's look at large tooth aspen. Okay, modulus of rupture, surprisingly, at 62, although again, remember, we're in well over 100 for the hickories, so it's less than half that. And the crushing strength, remember, in the hickories we're right around 55, 60. It's down to 36. Okay, so just to let you know, so that's why white ash and hickory are so much nicer than these other hardwoods, because when you look at the properties, they're up there. Okay, and even though relative to one another it might be a little bit higher or lower, when you throw something like birch and popple in there, popple's way down here. Okay, you see the difference. So that's why they're good woods. So yes, I've had my trouble with hickory. But the good thing is, it's such a tough wood that even with those anomalies and those problems, it still makes a great handle. Which is why that one that has the anomaly in the middle, I'm actually going to set that. I'll finish that handle and I'll put it in a split maul, and I will see how long it takes for that to last. And the same thing with that the one I sent to Joe Bransfield. Okay, it had that little warble in it from the growth rings, had that little wobble in it. So I want to see, like, and again, if there was a lot of that, which we call run out, then of course the handle's not as strong. But that little bit of a flip in there, I bet that handle lasts him really well. But we're going to find out. So I'm always testing. And that's how you learn. Keep looking at stuff like this, throwing it in an axe and trying it. Don't put it in a competition axe. Because you're swinging a razor blade with a crowd full of people around. Okay, so don't do it there. Put in a training axe or something you're going to swing out in the back 40, so, you know, the only person you're going to bother is the tree next door to you. So anyhow, that's this week's video. Lots of other cool stuff coming up. We're going to do those handles for Smyrna next week, and then I'm going to go to the woods, even though we're not allowed in the woods here in New Brunswick because it's so hot and so dry. But I'm going to take my axes out. Whether I go to a tree or whether I just go to the training deck. But I want to talk about how you hold an axe, how you swing an axe, and how it hits the wood, and all those forces and how they play, how they work on your handle, and why your handle breaks the way it does. Okay? So that'll be a really informative video, and that's going to come up here again in a couple of weeks. So stick around. Lots more coming up on East Coast Lumberjack.